to another episode of Toonland Inquire, and the first episode in 2021 at that. And if there's anything I've learned so far about myself this year so far, it's that I just can't keep a consistent schedule to save my life. Hence how we're now in February instead of January when this episode was supposed to be released. Technically, I originally planned this for December, but holy crap, do things go on the wayside that easily for me. Well, why won't I make it up to you all by covering more modern takes on our favorite Golden Age franchises? Say, did you know that Tom and Jerry had a lot of direct-to-video movies? They must have been pretty good for Warner Brothers to want to make 13 of them within the past 2 decades. Well, why don't we start with the last one that they did?
What the hell am I watching? Who thought this was a good idea?
He lived happily ever after.
Are you kidding me, Warner Brothers? Get that Gene Wilder insulting shit out of my face!
Okay, well, that turned out to be one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life, possibly. So maybe it's best for me to stay away from this franchise for now. But not to fear. There are other well-known IPs to work with. How about Woody Woodpecker? Surely there's no way anyone could mess him up. And now I have to burn every Woody Woodpecker DVD that I own. Looks like I'm gonna have to go down the rabbit hole if I want to find more decent reboots. And maybe just stick with TV shows after all. I mean, there's only so much you can do with characters meant for 7-minute shorts anyway, right? But really, what obscure Golden Age IP could possibly have a decent reboot made around the turn of the millennium? I mean, it seems like an impossible... Oh, wait a minute. Oh, maybe not. Folks, I might have found something. Let's check this out.
Now, to grab the dough and...
Poochie!
Woof.
That should get us started. That giant duck you see there is a character named Baby Huey, created at Paramount's Famous Studios, the successor to Fleischer Studios after officially dissolving in 1942. Baby Huey first appeared in a 1950 release short called Quack-a-Doodle-Doo, the premise essentially being an ugly duckling story but with a new twist. Baby Huey finds himself having a hard time fitting in due to his giant size. Yes, he's actually a child. Then a fox terrorizes the duck community, somehow stumbling upon Baby Huey only to find that everything he tries never kills him. Baby Huey finds out close to the end, "Dad, I think you're trying to kill me," and finally strikes back. Sounds like a decent short on its own, and it was popular enough apparently to spawn several more shorts with him doing virtually the same exact thing again and again. Besides the theme, like Boy Scouts in one short, Birthday Party in another, or Playing Circus elsewhere, as a few examples. The only major difference is that most of the succeeding shorts involve Baby Huey trying to fit in with the same Not Huey Doing Louie characters. Yes folks, in case you didn't catch before, Famous Studios wasn't even original in their naming conventions. And there were a couple instances where Baby Huey goes through the whole short without realizing that the fox was trying to kill him and gets the upper hand through literal dumb luck. The only ones that go against the usual premise were Huey's Ducky Daddy, where Baby Huey's dad is forced to take him fishing, Past Pupil, where Baby Huey gets private tutoring, and Huey's Father's Day, his last short in fact, where he tries to do all of his dad's chores. So overall, minus those aforementioned variations, if you watch Quack-a-Doodle-Doo, you've essentially seen all of Baby Huey's shorts. And if you want to see what I mean, as of this recording, I still have most of the Baby Huey shorts posted, and they still happen to be my most watched videos on this channel. Anyway, despite my statements, Famous Studios was sitting on a goldmine with Baby Huey, putting a new twist on the Lenny character type that you've seen commonplace in animation during that era. And while I enjoyed the premise of the giant underdog, or in this case, a giant underduck, surviving the fox's tactics through literal dumb luck a bit more, the original shorts don't even scratch the surface of Baby Huey's comedic potential. I mean, we're talking about a character who can withstand this. Think of all the other situations you can see this character in besides just being pursued by the same fox. And that's exactly what this new set of shorts from 1994 to 1995 would explore, at least much more often compared to the original shorts, titled simply under The Baby Huey Show. Technically, this was a programming block that showcased the Harvey-owned Famous Studios shorts combined with one of these new shorts in each episode, probably part of why these new shorts were overlooked. Here we have Baby Huey as his usual dumb, naive self, but as mentioned before, the writers decided to explore more situations to put the character in, from having a ghost trying and failing to scare Baby Huey, to being manipulated by a German infecting various parts of the body, albeit in a dream sequence, to having to take a wrestler's place after accidentally knocking him out, to becoming a superhero after watching a TV show, to name a few examples. Oh, and Baby Huey's father has a much larger presence among these shorts too, including the latter two examples as I just mentioned. And while he seemed to be the impatient type in his only 2 shorts from the original era, well, I think the following will tell you everything you need to know about this guy.
And now, my boy,
cast your eyes upon the symbol of my greatest achievement. 1963 Father and Son Picnic Trophy.
Buff Duck is my one true hero!
Don't you have any other heroes, Huey?
Mama!
And any others?
Casper!
Any living, breathing, real-life heroes who happen to be related to you and are sitting right in front of you?
I'm calling it right now. Baby Huey's dad is gonna get brainwashed by Fox News and still wonder why people are telecommuting now. And yes, the Fox appears in these shorts, of course, but not that much in proportion to the 26 total news shorts. And while he takes on the usual antagonist role, they don't feel like carbon copies of the originals that have already been done multiple times as is. In fact, they even poke fun at this routine a couple times throughout the series.
You're not gonna kill me this time, Mr. Fox. Hey! I thought I got rid of you in the last cartoon.
And let's not forget the nuclear holocaust caused by the Fox's antiques that somehow left Baby Huey's mother completely unscathed.
3, 2, 1, blast off!
And yes, this was cut for future re-airings. There was even one short where the fox tries to withhold from eating Huey after being confronted by the catnip to stop eating meat.
Poor, pathetic predator. It was mice and crows for me. But that's all over. I haven't eaten meat for 20 years.
Well, considering the number of times this cat was mutilated and killed when facing against Herman and Buzzy, can you fucking blame him? So overall, we're left with a bunch of pleasantly funny shorts that again finally realized that they were sitting on a comedy goldmine with an invincible giant baby duck. Only took 40-something years to get to this point. Although I should state that with a show of this nature, especially being from the 90s and beyond with comedy cartoons riding off Ren and Stimpy's high, expect the humor sometimes to go into that territory. Also, aspects of it may feel a bit dated, like Baby Huey's boomer dad, and some bits of dialogue here and there.
My name's Ms. Bite. I'm here to look after you.
Aw, man. It's that crazy fox again.
Yeah, and he's wearing women's clothing, too. You need some help, fella.
Now, you may be watching much of these clips and asking yourself, why am I getting Ren and Stimpy vibes? Well, that's because the Season 1 shorts, 13 shorts to be exact, were made by Carbuncle Cartoons, most famously known for their work on Ren and Stimpy. Although Bob Jacks was the executive producer, him and Kelly Armstrong would be behind all but one of the shorts in the season, whether directing or writing. That one short neither two did direct or write was A Dog's Day Night, which not only features a Popeye cameo, but was also written by Henry Gilroy, who's the only one who would return to write for a Season 2 episode, more on that shortly, and directed by Ron Zorman, who would write for a few other episodes in Season 1, and later would become a very prominent animator at Pixar. From the pacing to the animation to the gags that they put in, you can definitely see how this has Carbuncle Cartoons written all over it. Oh, and on a final note regarding Season 1, Sid Raymond, who voiced Baby Huey in the original shorts, actually reprised his role here as well.
Hey, you! You're the fox! And I think you're trying to kill me. Hey, you're no photographer, you're the fox. And I think you're trying to kill me.
Considering he was in his mid-80s when recording his lines and not having voiced Baby Huey in 30-something years, he sure as hell still got it. Now to talk about the Season 2 shorts, while the spirit of trying new things with Baby Huey was still present and done at least decently well, that same punch from Season 1 just wasn't as present. It's hard to pinpoint, but from the change of Baby Huey's voice, the late Joe Lasky replacing Sid Raymond, which you were probably able to catch in the difference from the previous clips I played, but just so you don't have to go back.
I'm gonna play at the beach, I'm gonna
get my hair cut. I'm gonna get my hair cut.
Anyway, from that to the amount of times Baby Huey would make this face to, of course, the fact that Carbuncle Cartoons wasn't producing the Season 2 shorts, it feels a bit more generic than the Season 1 shorts, at least from a style and timing of humor point of view. As for what animation studio was behind the Season 2 shorts, the credits say Universal/Harvey Animation Studios. Interesting how some things come back in full circle, don't it? But yes, to elaborate on that aspect, Universal briefly collaborated with Harvey in the 90s, hence advance not only season 2 of the Baby Huey show, but also some Casper related projects at the time. I still don't know why it says everywhere that Phil Roman did season 2 despite the credits not even stating that. Either way, what we got as a result of losing Carbuncle Cartoons was a batch of new shorts with a more generic look and feel. Again, still decent to good as a whole, just not quite to the level of Carbuncle season 1. Since these shorts got absolutely no home video or streaming release since then, I would highly suggest checking out the YouTube channel Hueytoons, which has all 26 shorts posted.
God damn it. I was hoping I could bypass acknowledging John K's existence when I mentioned Ren and Stimpy back then, but it's gonna be a lot easier said than done from here on out since he actually happened to be heavily involved in another decent Golden Age reboot known as Mighty Mouse The New Adventures.
Yes, the flagship character of Terrytoons had another reboot. And yes, I said another because before this, Filmation did their take on the franchise with The New Adventures of Mighty Mouse and Heckle and Jekyll in 1979. But don't worry, we're not gonna suffer through a Filmation production. For now. We're focusing on the Ralph Bakshi created revival show that premiered on CBS in 1987, which not only is much better, but arguably one of the most important shows of its time. Yes, I do mean close to, if not at the same levels as 1987's DuckTales, Roger Rabbit, and The Little Mermaid, though I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't think I need to give this character much of an intro, since the name Mighty Mouse and what I'm showing in the background is self-explanatory. Using his mightiness to save the day, more often than not only showing up within the last 2 minutes of the short, basically being used more as a plot device than an actual character to end the short. But particularly in much of the later shorts, Mighty Mouse was consistently pitted against Oil Can Harry, who was usually holding Pearl Pureheart hostage one way or another, where they sing their banter to each other from start to finish.
Mighty Mouse, hurry up! Please hurry, Mighty Mouse! I am on my way!
Aha, me proud beauty, you now belong to me. To me, to me, yes, you belong to me.
Never, oh never, oh no, sir.
Mighty Mouse The New Adventures, however, takes the concept of the superhero parody a step further by having their own metropolis known as Mouseville, where Mighty Mouse has his Clark Kent equivalent Mike Mouse, who works at a factory run by Pearl Pureheart, her being the only other returning character from the original shorts, sans a few guest appearances which I'll touch upon in a bit. While a normal sounding guy is Mike Mouse, as Mighty Mouse, his personality and voice are reminiscent to the original shorts, most of which are heard from the Oil Can Harry shorts. With the show that's sharply different from the original shorts in tone and spirit, it's no surprise that Mighty Mouse The New Adventures would much more often than not throw in many new characters for the title hero to work with and or against, some of whom became recurring characters throughout, like passing his duties to another heroic colleague named, wait for it, Bat-Bat! Welcome to the peak of humanity, folks. And yes, Bat-Bat does have his own Robin named Bug Wonder. Then in other episodes you have an orphan named Scrappy who idolizes Mighty Mouse and typically finds himself in trouble and in need of his help, from being kidnapped to perform at a carnival to being served as a burger, and of course, you can't forget your new villains like Petey Pate, a cat with a bald scalp who used that as an excuse to turn evil and kidnaps Pearl Pureheart just to get Mighty Mouse's attention. And in another instance, he actually eradicates all cats in Mouseville just to render Mighty Mouse useless. There's also the cow, that's actually his name, who tries to get back at the dairy industry. Self-explanatory, I think, but generally just evil for the hell of it. Even to the point in one episode bailing the Oil Can Harry, who's been after Pearl Pureheart for literal decades, out of prison just so he can have the biggest sell. Which perfectly brings me to some of the returning characters from the original Terrytoons shorts. Most notably Gandy Goose, who got separated from Sourpuss in one episode after being frozen in ice for several decades, with several others making a cameo appearance, including Heckle and Jekyll in what was supposed to be the wedding episode. And I say supposed to be because this is how they decide to end it.
I can't go through with it! I can't do it! I can't marry him!
See, Family Guy, that's how you uphold the status quo. This new take on Mighty Mouse really does make full use of his, well, mightiness. Which in turn just gives us wacky, cartoony fun. Exactly what we needed after decades of quality drought, and given this is the 80s. Also standing out from the other cartoons that were made during this time just for merchandising purposes, or as has been the case for decades at that point, to fill up Saturday morning slots in a half-assed manner. You can tell by the show's energy that the staff was so relieved to be working on something that actually gave them creative freedom, all the way down to the animation style, which while obviously made in the style of the Golden Age shorts, Mighty Mouse The New Adventures specifically takes heavy inspiration from the rubbery gym tire animation that dominated the Terrytoons shorts in the late 40s and 50s. Frankly, it was one of the major saving graces of the studio that was otherwise run like a sweatshop, but that's for another episode. It's hard for me not to respect a cartoon, let alone one from the 80s, that doesn't take itself seriously and pokes fun of various tropes, from fourth wall breaking to of course the references and parodies to other shows.
Hey look, these guys are telling jokes. They're not supposed to do that. Yeah, next thing you know, people will start laughing at them. We gotta stop them, okay? But how? Oh, I know. Let's select them out with extreme prejudice. Ready for cancellation. Aim.
Oh, no you don't! Not my cartoon buddies!
And among the show's funny moments came one of the most poignant lines in all of writing history.
Your bad jokes are becoming a health hazard to the entire city!
Somebody please turn this into a meme. We gave the Terrytoons a chance to shine 3 years ago. We can do it again for this. Hell, you can use them for any dumb joke that I make in my videos. Anyway, on another note, given the very low bar the original Terrytoons shorts set, especially from a production standpoint, it goes without saying that this show easily exceeds them on all levels, even to the point of having a narrator that's actually energetic and is well informed on the vibe that he's supposed to portray.
Here, the most vicious villains in all the land gather to plot their nefarious schemes. It is here that the most terrifying masterminds of them all, the supervillains, begin their awesome waves of crime.
It was just another typical day in Mouseville when it started. The sun was shining, the flowers were blooming, and the mice were doing what they did best, running for their lives.
Which greatly differs from the originals, where it felt like the narrator wasn't given much direction beyond trying to copy how other productions would tackle this, resulting more often than not sounding like I was watching one of those instructional videos from around the same time those aforementioned shorts were made.
Well, the purpose of a party is to have fun together. And a successful party needs planning and skill.
This is the peaceful little village of Terrytown. And this is the Terrytown High School. And every afternoon, precisely at 3 o'clock.
Now, if there are a few small criticisms I have with the show, one would be at times the animation can get kind of messy and unpolished. This was most evident in the second season, where it can range from being sketchy to too much going on the screen, even by the show's cartoony standards. Perhaps respectively either as a way to cut corners. After all, this was the era when the average animation studio was held to hectic production schedules just to get the next merchandisable cartoon on the air. Or that they really wanted to cement the fact that this was a weird show with weird poses and weird takes. Now don't get me wrong, I would much rather deal with this issue compared to all the other problems that have been plaguing the animation industry in general for up to 2.5 decades at that point. But at the end of the day, it's best to be
perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
My other criticism being Scrappy being a bit generic. Not hateable, just not memorable. I mean, we're talking about a superhero idolizing orphan who's good-hearted yet gets into mischief and or trouble, triggering the need for rescue. We've heard of this character type countless times. On a final note, naturally this show had to work around budget cuts, which meant a few of these episodes would end up being clip shows. In one instance, the series finale in fact, Mighty Mouse punishes villains by showing clips from other episodes. In a couple others, a montage of various clips from the original Terrytoons shorts would play to a musical piece of sorts. Exactly what Disney Channel was doing at the time with DTV. Now getting back on my statement on how important Mighty Mouse The New Adventures was at the time, as I mentioned before, after decades of treating animation as well, nothing more than jingling keys for kids, there is no doubt that a lot of animators and writers in the industry wanted in on something different, making Mighty Mouse The New Adventures quite the talent magnet. This was the show after all that some have said to be a foreshadow, or possibly even a trend starter, to not only the return of higher quality animated projects in general from both a production and writing standpoint, but also the idea of pushing creative boundaries, re-acknowledging the fact that in cartoons, you could do anything. Who'da thunk? And with that, lots of recognizable talent have made their mark and in some cases even got their start with this show. To first address the elephant in the room straight on though, yes, John K, as mentioned earlier, was heavily involved in Mighty Mouse The New Adventures, being the senior director for most of the show's run. So it comes as no surprise that a lot of the show's humor and animation style will carry on to Ren and Stimpy, one of the first 3 Nicktoons premiering alongside Rugrats and Doug, all of which not only paved the way for more animated programming on Nickelodeon as the years went by, and in turn increasing competition with other networks and animation blocks, but would also be a major influence on comedic cartoons in general going forward. While the Ren and Stimpy franchise will still be remembered, let's just say that John K's only chance at recognition again passed when Chris Hansen stopped doing his predator catching segment on TV.
Right over there, please. No, right there, please have a seat.
Feeding off Ren and Stimpy, Bob Jackson, responsible for many of its great episodes, also worked as a director on Mighty Mouse. Between this show and the Baby Huey show, we really should have given him more Golden Age IPs to reboot or happily involve him in. Then you've also got Tom Minton here, who would become a very prominent writer throughout Warner Bros. Silver Age and beyond, from Tiny Toons to Animaniacs to the Tweety and Sylvester Mysteries, all the way up to Duck Dodgers. Then for two of the artists who got their start here straight out of CalArts, you've got Rich Moore, working as a prominent writer in Mighty Mouse New Adventures as well, better known later for his work on The Simpsons during their golden years and later at Disney with Wreck-It Ralph and Zootopia, and now with whatever he's planning at Sony Pictures Animation. And last but very much not least, Andrew Stanton. Yes, the same Andrew Stanton who directed all this and or involved with the writing of all this, got his start in the industry with this very show. I'm sure there's more I could list here, but those are the major names I'm sure many of you know to some capacity, not always for good reason of course. With the show run by a man with extensive experience both at Terrytoons and theatrical animation, and having a staff eager to make the mark in the animation industry by returning, well, creative freedom and fun in the process, there was absolutely nothing that could stop these.
I know someone else like that.
Ooh. That. So about this scene, editor Tom Klein was worried that it would be taken as cocaine use, even though it was established that it was just crushed flower remains.
Won't you buy a stem?
And of course, combining with the massive influence parent groups have already largely exercised over the animation industry at that point, the scene was cut initially to play it safe, until John K. expressed his anger about the edit, prompting Bakshi to have Klein restore that bit. And you know what? Seeing how this episode aired without controversy on Halloween 1987, looks like they had nothing to worry about after all. I mean, what kind of American Family Association leading zealot would go after this show more than 7 months after its premiere?
How dare you CBS for hiring Ralph Bakshi, allowing the pornographer to show cocaine in a children's show? Not cocaine, you say? Clearly just crushed flower remains, you say? Are you expecting us to actually watch the episode and understand the meaning of context? We were one of the most vile anti-gay hate groups in America. That alone makes us more qualified to determine what's appropriate for 75% of American households to watch. So we're not gonna stop with our accusations until... Hey, you see? The edit means there was cocaine in the children's cartoon. We demand the removal of Ralph Bakshi at once. What? You thought we were just going to let go of this? What other take would American Family Association get to make a scene out of a controversy we pulled out of our own ass? I mean, won't somebody please think of the children?
Jesus fucking Christ! How many parent and religious groups are we gonna have to keep catering to? No. Not this time. Not fucking today. I am preparing a statement. Ralph Bakshi is a rational, compliant man who just wanted to create a fun little cartoon for kids.
Now, exact details surrounding the show's cancellation are pretty unclear, especially given that American Family Association escalated this accusation just over 3 months before the second season's premiere, so feel free to call me out if I'm way off mark. However, as far as I know, even after watching the show's documentary, I can still only assume that this ruckus was what brought down Mighty Mouse The New Adventures. Hence, not only a very short 6-episode second season that aired in September and October of 1988, that may have came along with some possible corner-cutting issues that I touched upon, but also the fact that a lot of the staff from the 13-episode long season 1, including everyone I mentioned except for Tom Minton, didn't have credit in any season 2 episode. Even though CBS did support Bakshi all the way through, this just became another good show gone too soon as a result, of a group of people that have no imagination anyway. Also by extension, since John K. was the one who was pissy about the cut in the first place and pushed Bakshi and Klein to restore the scene, he technically has fault in the show's cancellation as well. Obviously not the worst thing he's done in his life by a long shot, but hey, you can never run out of reasons to diss John K.
So seeing some humorless deer crack go after a show of this nature does leave a pretty bad taste, doesn't it? Well, allow me to counter that with one last show we're going to talk about, Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat.
Yes, one of animation's first biggest stars pre-Mickey Mouse, if not the first. I don't think nearly as many people know Farmer Alfalfa as well. Even got his chance at exposure well past his golden age years. In this case, his shorts up to around 1930 when they first tried transitioning him into sound. Later in the decade, specifically 1936, Van Bruin Studios tried to reboot the Felix shorts, all of which have since fallen into public domain, giving him much more of a plucky boyish aw shucks personality. personality, not unlike Mickey Mouse for the longest while, but this theatrical revival didn't last. Then there's the 1959 to 1961 made-for-TV shorts which Paramount Cartoons, essentially famous studios, were branded after around 1956. Produced by Translux, putting Felix in episodic adventures and introduced us to his magic bag, as well as new characters, mainly the Professor and his nephew Poindexter, as well as a dog named Rockbottom. Most of the plots in those shorts were very simple, largely around the Professor trying to best Felix through various means, but famously by attempting to steal his magic bag, so still a toned down take on the character like with the Van Boon shorts. Then you have the 1988 mostly Hungarian animated film simply titled Felix the Cat the Movie, which was...
Boy, I haven't seen this much fruit salad since I was in California.
an acid trip. But then in 1995, Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, which utilized some key elements from the 1959 series, mainly the episodic format again, much of which involved his magic bag, as well as Poindexter in some episodes. However, it also decided to return the wackiness and mischievous nature from Felix's prime in his original shorts, giving this show less of a generic kids show vibe in favor for one that takes heavily after the Fleischer-esque rubber hose environment of the 20s and 30s. And just one look at the animation, background, and sight gags is more than enough proof of that notion. Just to emphasize my point here, we went from this
By the way, Mr. Felix, what is in that bag?
What is in it? Why, it's my magic bag.
to this.
I'm trying to find Splash City.
I would even argue the mindset going into this show is similar to how production approached Mighty Mouse New Adventures, albeit on a smaller scale, in that they wanted to do something different after having Felix watered down for decades. Given again the elements from the 1959 cartoon still being used here, much of the show of course revolves either around various other characters only created for the show trying to get a hold of his bag and or Felix using his bag to help others, but with or without the bag, and yes they actually do acknowledge that aspect in at least one episode.
Felix, I'm curious. Why didn't you just use your magic bag to get out of this?
He's not in every episode. What are you gonna do?
He never ceases to avoid being in batshit insane situations. We see Felix end up on an island where puns are illegal, having to get Earth back after it was taken by Repo, Felix ending up transferring from movie to movie after being eaten up by a TV that was having a midnight snack while sleeping in a video rental store, and I can't believe I just put all of those words in one sentence. Felix and Poindexter having to deal with a Star Trek-like ship dumping trash on their planet, needing to stop the Bermuda Triangle from spreading its stupidity. Hell, there was even a segment in this show where Felix was being tried because a shark was watching his 1936 short Neptune nonsense.
Well, punk, what have you got to say for yourself?
Oh yeah, I remember this cartoon. Is this your favorite?
Shut up, punk! You have insulted me personally, and all the fish types in general, with your insensitive portrayal of barbaric anti-sea life extermination!
But I was just fishing.
Shut up!
These examples I mentioned are just the ones I'm able to describe best. This video is not going to do justice in understanding how insane Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat is. As far as humor is concerned, in addition to the overall wackiness, it gets very self-referential. Like I mentioned with the fishing episode example, and with that, you'll bet we get a lot of fourth wall breaking gags, including one episode where they literally, a term I do not use loosely, have to complete a scene themselves after finding out the animators were not present. Of course, we also have the movie TV show parodies like again with Star Trek, and another notable one being this Barney parody named Fuzzy Bunny who took over Felix's spot on TV and plans to capitalize on kids worldwide. And last but most certainly not least, this show's background music. Holy sweet Walt Disney, Colonel Sanders, but Jeebus Buddha Almighty. It is out of this world. All of Season 1 was composed by the Clubfoot Orchestra, known for their scoring on silent films from The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari to Metropolis, so quite a fitting decision to have this ensemble compose the score for a franchise that originated and thrived during the silent era. Unfortunately, they didn't return for Season 2, with the composition being replaced by someone named Nathan Wang.
Wow, Las Vegas sure is cool. I don't know which casino to hit first. I have to find 500 Elm Drive. Here's 200 Elm Drive.
Naturally, it was a downgrade, but he tried to keep the score's lively spirit alive. On a final note, Felix's voice in Season 1 was someone by the name of Tom Adcox Hernandez, originally intending to be a child's voice in the spirit of the Van Bruin shorts in the 1959 series.
Alright, give me that!
But in Season 2, his voice was replaced by Charlie Adler, a lot more scratchy and deeper than before.
Okay, I'll do it! Just stop with the lasers already!
As far as the staff who worked on this show, it wasn't as much of a springboard for many of those big-time names in the animation industry like Mighty Mouse The New Adventure was, but there were still a couple names that still stuck out, both of whom have a connection to SpongeBob, funny enough. How so, you may ask? Well, Tom Kenny lent his voice in one segment called Pegleg Felix as Captain Herman.
Who dares bother Herman, the pirate ghost?
And Doug Lawrence was a very prominent writer on this show as well. I'm sure there are plenty other actors and writers you can probably name easily on here, but again, that's what popped out for me.
So let's recap. This is a show that gets closer to the idea of why Felix the Cat got popular in the first place, is animated well, is batshit insane, is funny, not afraid to poke fun of itself, and of course it has great orchestration. As a math major and a computer at my day job, I was easily able to determine what this formula equates to. A show that I absolutely fucking love!
Now, I'll be fair and say that this show might not be for everyone. As I mentioned in a previous video, and you'll probably hear me say again, I prefer wacky, cartoony mayhem in general. And insanity is shoved consistently throughout Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, to the point that some might find it overwhelming. And that's fine. That said, if you like what I've described about this show, I highly recommend checking it out. But where, you may ask? Huh. You're not gonna believe this. On a little streaming service known as Peacock. Yeah, I'm not kidding, because Universal owns DreamWorks, which owns the Felix the Cat IP. Which means, yes, there's actually something worth watching on Peacock. Now, there's a combination of words you likely weren't gonna hear anytime soon. It's quite perplexing as well when you consider that this show had no full DVD release prior, and the only way you would have been able to watch the show in its entirety was on YouTube. The audio was in English, but the title cards were in German, I believe. So if you want to watch Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat the official way, just register for a free trial and binge through the show. With only 21 episodes, it's doable.
So there you have it, folks. More Golden Age IPs and the reboots covered. And good ones at least. Whether you think these shows, especially with the Baby Huey and Mighty Mouse show, are better than their respective originals, I'd love to hear your viewpoints. But personally, given the limitations from a creative and production standpoint that the original studios were subjected to, I honestly think these modern takes do surpass them, generally speaking, or at least in Felix's case, at least in the ballpark of what I would envision the next step of Felix's evolution would be as he transitioned from silent to sound, rather than become another Mickey Mouse wannabe. Stumbling upon reboots of this nature is a good reminder of two things. One obviously being that everyone values different things in entertainment. For all I know, many of you disagree vehemently with my opinions on the Baby Huey show, Mighty Mouse The New Adventures, and Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat. And that's perfectly fine. After all, I am one of the first animation YouTubers, if not the only one who would openly say that I like Uncle Grandpa. Yes, you heard correctly. And no, I am not just saying it because Peter Braungart would go on to have the new Looney Tunes cartoon shorts. I just like wacky comedy mayhem that much. Though Pizza Steve can go fuck himself. And two, old doesn't always mean good, even during the golden age of animation, as much as I love that era of animation. Besides every studio's eventual downfall with the advent of television, there were some studios that just couldn't get it together, and you could see that often reflected in their output. Like Terrytoons with their shoestring budget productions that not only valued quantity over quality, but kept production values more or less static after the late 1930s until Paul Terry's retirement. And Paramount's famous studios with their repetitive plotlines and excuses to cash in on Tex Avery's Spock gag cartoons, Disney's cuteness, and Tom and Jerry at the same time. So any opportunity to fully utilize these IPs in a way that their original studios couldn't, or in Felix's case again, wasn't able to successfully transition from silent to sound, I think is a reasonable avenue to explore. Or at the very least, I would much rather have a Heckle and Jekyll reboot done in the same style as Mighty Mouse The New Adventures than another one of those. Now speaking of subpar animation studios, let me tell you about one that had so little of its shit together that not only did the little of its established characters didn't even have a reboot well after the golden age of animation, but the studio itself didn't even make it past the 1940s.
Hiya folks, Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, remember to click like below. Subscribe and hit that bell so you can be the first to see any new content that I post. You can also follow me on Twitter and my WordPress accounts at the links below, the latter which I use to post any larger than average updates to my videos and or channel. In the meantime, you can view my other Toonland Inquirer episodes on the right hand side, or perhaps keep watching the Baby Huey and Herman and Catnip shorts I uploaded years back. Either or. Well, that's all for now, folks. See you next time.